Central is in Edinburgh, talking to Jim Corr, who may be known to many people as one-fourth of the internationally famous Irish family band, The Corrs. However, Jim came to the consciousness of Freedom Central through his work as an activist and educator. Jim is probably the only vocal entertainment celebrity that is speaking out about the issues that threaten humanity at present. Jim, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate you squeezing us in. We know you're very busy. Before we tackle your information you've been presenting, how is it that you've come to be on this journey communicating this information?
Well, I suppose my journey of my awakening, I suppose, started about 4 years ago. And it was when I properly started to study the anomalies in relation to 9/11. And I discovered that the official government story was a complete lie. It insulted the intelligence of a child. And I decided to continue on out of curiosity, just kind of studying, well, you know, who's really in control and what's the ultimate agenda. And I discovered some pretty unpalatable things, and when I did, I felt that I had not just a duty, but I had an overwhelming urge to bring this information out into the public arena, which is what I did by setting up my website and doing some interviews. And then I suppose the next logical step really was to start doing speaking engagements and bringing the information out into the public arena more, which is what I've started to do. And that's really, it's just about getting the information out to people. That's what I feel is very important.
You're constantly surrounded by people in an industry that's all about perpetuating the illusion. How have you managed to break free yourself?
Well, break free, well, my conditioning, I suppose, ran very, very deep. I suppose I naively would have thought that most of what I was seeing on the television was at least had some element of truth in it. But you know, I've learned that things are a lot different now, particularly in relation to staged terrorist events like 9/11, 7/7, and well, I haven't broken away from music. I love music, you know. That's my first love, you know, and I'll always continue to do that. I love writing. And you know, this is kind of it, but I feel this is a very important part of my life as well, to be bringing good information to people, and people are wakening up in their droves, I believe. You know, it's all good. I just think it's if I have a role to play in this, that my role is to hopefully get to the people who are asleep, like I was for a long time, and also to the people who are awakening.
Absolutely. How do you go about raising awareness, and what do you focus on? What is your point that you try to get across to bring people into this information?
Well, I believe that if people can understand properly what happened on 9/11, and more to the point, what didn't happen on 9/11, I believe that it can open up their perception to the agenda, what is really going on behind the scenes. Very important that we all understand 9/11, because it's the nexus doorway into the bigger picture. So I focus on that in my presentation. I also focus on the anomalies in relation to the London bombings, and also I talk about false flag terrorism, because in my own process of awakening, it was only when I got to understand what false flag operations were that it kind of pulled the whole thing in together for me, because then I understood that if you've got an elite that are involved in the military-industrial complex, and they desire, obviously war is hugely profitable to them, well, how can they dupe an entire nation into getting behind an illegal, unjust war? Because most people hate war for obvious reasons. So how did they do that? And that's where false flag operations come in. And I went back through history, learned about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. I learned about Hitler having his own men set fire to the Reichstag building, and which allowed him to clamp down on the opposition and gain more power. And how through the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which apparently never happened now, where a Vietnamese PT boat was supposed to have fired upon a US naval cruiser. It never happened, but it allowed the US to commit to the Vietnam War.
Yes.
So they use false flag operations to sucker nations, entire nations and their allies into getting behind illegal, unjust wars, because wars are hugely profitable. And not to mention, of course, the fact that when they can go in and covertly colonize another nation like Afghanistan and Iraq, then of course they're able to dominate the opium trade and also the oil trade.
So how have your family reacted to the work you're doing, Jim? You don't talk much about that. Are they supportive? Do they understand this information? And how have they processed it, and how is it affecting your career?
I think they understand what I'm doing. They understand that this is very important to me, and that's all that matters. And when I learned of the inconsistencies in the 9/11 fairy tale, I had an urge to tell everyone, and I was bombarding everyone that I met with information, including my family. But once I set up my website as a hub for information, I relaxed a hell of a lot. So I don't get into preaching to anybody about this now, because I have my outlet of expression, and also, of course, doing the speaking engagements. I suppose that they're like most families. I suppose it's they can go onto my website if they want. They know my views very clearly. They're there on my website. They're there in the videos that I make, they can take the information, take or leave it, like anybody else can.
What do you think is the ultimate goal of the movement at the moment? How do you think it's going to fulfill itself?
Okay. Well, the 9/11 Truth movement has made such ground, has done basically such a successful job, that you can now see what is happening now is that the mainstream media can no longer ignore the basic facts. And we had Geraldo Rivera on Fox News interviewing the father of one of the victims who was killed in the towers. And what the father had done with a group of the family members was to create a short clip, a video clip. Basically, it was all about Building 7, World Trade Center 7, which collapsed neatly into its own footprint at free fall speed, and no plane hit it whatsoever. So they aired this ad called Building What on all the cable channels, I think, in New York. And so the mainstream media cannot ignore this any longer. So I reckon that what they're going to try and do now is to basically try and control the opposition, and probably try and blame it on the lower level people that were involved in this. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. 9/11 Truth is just it's out. It's out of the bottle. There's nothing they can do about that. All they can do is try and control it. So, but as I say, very important that people do understand properly 9/11, because it is the doorway through which you get an understanding for what is really going on behind the scenes. And I put all this information up on my website, what the agenda is.